Welcome back, everyone, to another Weather at a Glance video. In today's forecast, we are going to be going over our official July 2022 forecast, all coming up in just a bit. All right, now on our first slide, we're going to be taking a look at that temperature forecast for the July 2022 month. And what we're going to be looking at first is that slightly below average region. We have actually two different areas of slightly below average temperatures. So we're going to go over here, and our first region is going to be, surprisingly, down here in eastern Arizona and western New Mexico. And the reason for this is that early start to the monsoon season. We see a lot of precipitation falling in these areas, and that is going to lead to some slightly cooler temperatures at times. Again, always with these slightly cooler and slightly above average temperatures, you're never really going to notice it. It's not really going to be too noticeable, but the point is that it could cause some micro changes, and that's why we list it here. So there is going to be a little bit of a decrease in the temperatures, a very slight decrease, maybe about 5 degrees or so below average, but nothing really too much that you're really going to notice. Now, for the next region here, we have up in the northern United States. This includes portions of the northern Great Lakes and portions of the Northeast as well. So these areas here are going to be looking at some slightly below average, pretty much the same thing. Now, this is going to be caused for a different reason, and we're going to go over that real quick here. So we're going to go over the jet stream pattern here, and as you can see, the jet stream starts off like this. So we're going to go over in Oregon. We kind of see it make a little bit of an arch, kind of a ridge over the west, per se, and then we're going to come down into the eastern half of the United States, and we see a bit of a trough develop. Now, this is a little bit northward right now, so the jet stream in this current time actually looks like this. It is very far north, and it really doesn't make too much of an indent right now. But the point is that we're going to see more of a jet stream pattern like this, and we're going to see that typical La Nina jet stream pattern as we go back into a stronger La Nina heading towards fall. But right now, you can see that this is kind of what we're looking at. So that's going to keep temperatures cooler up for these areas. Now, even though all of these areas right here are above that jet stream, this is only for a consistent part of time. These areas up in the north here, these areas are going to be in a consistent area of below average temperatures because they're going to be in that consistent pattern of being above the jet stream here. The jet stream is oftentimes going to stay far below these areas. Now, moving on to our next region, we're going to take a look at those slightly above average temperatures. And again, when you talk about the slightly above and slightly below average temperatures, you're only talking about micro changes, nothing too noticeable to the body. But what we're going to notice here is we're going to see that this is going to come through the southeastern United States and head up kind of as an arch up through the Great Plains here. And now that we come back down, we're going to see it goes through Texas and back through parts of northern Florida. And what this is going to be caused by is that ridge that we were talking about. So we're going to see oftentimes that polar jet stream goes north and it's going to form that ridge, but then it's going to come back down. And now a lot of these areas you would say too that they're going to be experiencing above average temperatures, but right now they're seasonably average. So these areas are not going to be experiencing above average temperatures at this time. But as we see, it's going to come back down here, and we're going to see a lot of those peaking temperatures back into the 100s again, especially for this area. So that is about normal for this time of year, but we are going to see a little bit of a slight increase, especially with that surge of humidity with the warm air advection. And basically what that means is that's a surge of humidity and warm air. It's advecting from the Gulf and heading up north. So we've been seeing a lot of the strong warm air advection with the humidity, and that humidity is going to form an extra amount of heat that's going to create those slightly above average temperatures. Now, these areas do often get humidity. They're always humid around this time of year, especially up into Kansas, but there's going to be a bit more of a surge, and that's going to help form this slightly above average temperatures, all of these slightly above average temperatures that we've been talking about here so far. And now as we head down to the southeast, this area is going to be caused by the similar pattern, but this is going to be caused by that jet stream still staying north. So we're going to see that jet stream kind of acting as a blockage, and it's rarely ever going to take a trough dip this far down. So that's going to be keeping the warm air down south. So we're going to be seeing a lot of that warm air staying down south here, and it's not really going to be able to move anywhere else, and we're not really going to see any of that cold air surge down into the southern United States. There may be some occasional changes where the cold air does end up surging down south if we get a very strong trough move through and that dips that far south. And then, of course, we've seen those ridges that kind of develop occasionally up into the eastern half of the United States, and that's going to show that we could also see some warmer temperatures come in here. But the consistent pattern is showing that these areas up here are generally going to stay slightly colder, nothing too noticeable though, and these areas are going to stay slightly warmer, but nothing too noticeable. All right, now moving into our final region on this map, we're going to be taking a look at that area of above average temperatures. And this area is going to be your noticeable region here. You are going to likely notice a little bit of warmer temperatures. So basically, let's say you have about 10 degrees above average temperatures here. What you normally would have, let's say your average temperature is 100 degrees Fahrenheit, you may see temperatures consistently reaching 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, that will occasionally change with a cold front or rainfall. Anything could change that. But the average is going to be those warmer temperatures that we're talking about. So your average temperature could be around maybe peaking near 110 degrees Fahrenheit, maybe in the mid 100s. But the point is that you will be noticing above average temperatures here, and that is caused by that surge of humidity, that warm air advection that we were talking about, and that consistent northern blockage here. So we're talking about the northern jet stream blockage that's going to lock everything down south. It's going to keep all the heat down south. Occasionally that will move north, but you're still going to continue to be hot down here until a trough moves through and cools everything down, or a cold front. So keep that in mind. And in this time of year, in the La Nina pattern, we are rarely ever going to see a trough come down into Texas around that time, because we're going to see that consistent jet stream pattern that takes it through Washington and Oregon, kind of forms a ridge over the western United States and central United States, and then it's going to head back down south in that trough there that we're talking about. So now we could see the trough occasionally develop a little bit westward, but that's likely not to happen too often. All right, now we're going to be moving into our precipitation forecast. And first thing we're going to notice is that slightly below average precipitation region over there. And we're going to be checking this out for California here. So now this is going to be caused by, you may notice that we do have a lot of areas of average precipitation. And this is the only region in the United States that has that slightly below average region on the map. And that is going to be caused by the lack of precipitation that we've seen so far. We've seen a lot of lack of precipitation for California, none at all basically for these areas. Now we did see a little bit of a surge of precipitation down in the southeastern portion of California last week, but that is going to stop for a little while. That was caused by a surge of humidity up from the Pacific Ocean, and with that dry air caused a lot of monsoon type systems, and that's what we're seeing out here in Arizona and New Mexico. But right now, we're going to continue to keep things dry, and I do believe that's going to stay consistent throughout July. And it's going to be a very dry pattern for this time of year, especially with that strong La Nina. This is where you start to move into the dry season. So you can understand that while we're moving into the dry season, we're still slightly below average for those areas. You are usually supposed to experience about half an inch or so of precipitation, maybe about 0.2 inches of rainfall for a lot of these areas in California for this time of year throughout the month of July. But right now we're looking at the potential for no rainfall at all throughout much of the season. Now up in the northern areas, you will still experience some rainfall, but down here in the central portions and southern portions of California, you are likely not to see a drop of rain throughout July. Now that could change with a sparse shower caused by humidity, but oftentimes you're not going to see any rainfall throughout this month of July if you are in this region. All right, and for our next region, we're going to be taking a look at that area of slightly above average precipitation. Now again, with slightly above average anything, we're not really going to see too much noticeable action, but we're going to see micro adjustments in the atmosphere. So basically what's going to be happening is we are seeing a lot of that surge of monsoon style systems moving up through here. We're going to see a lot of those storm cells develop up into Utah, southern Wyoming, and Colorado, as well as New Mexico. So a lot of these areas on the outer bands, this is where you're not going to get the strong monsoon season yet, but you are going to be experiencing some rainfall, and it is going to likely cause some slightly above average precipitation, especially for this time of year. Now moving into our next region of slightly above average precipitation, we are looking at the southeastern United States. And again, this is different for this time of year. We oftentimes see this area being dry, especially in the La Nina season. So what's going on here? Well, we're seeing a surge of humidity again. That Gulf is really pumping out a lot of humidity, and we're seeing a lot of those little convective showers, popcorn cells as we like to call them. And right now you can see that there's been a lot of rainfall for the southeastern United States. I do not believe that a lot of these showers are going to surge northward, and these popcorn style systems generally do not last long. They're very short-lived. They cave in on their updrafts and thus stop the support of the storm. But for right now, a lot of these areas are going to be experiencing a lot of that tropical humidity, and it's going to be creating a lot of showers, a lot of tropical showers too. We saw that little system develop off of Texas right here, and it is moving into Texas right now as we speak. But right now, that's a very weak tropical system, but you saw that it formed itself with those tropical showers. So we're going to see a lot of tropical shower activity down here for the southeast United States. It's going to be very warm, muggy, and there will be a little bit of slightly above average precipitation. I do not believe that we'll put an above average precipitation region there, simply because there is still rainfall for this time of year. Yes, we do see a lot of convective cells for this area, but we're going to be seeing a little bit more of action and precipitation for this area throughout the month of July. All right, and for our final region on this map, we're going to be taking a look at this above average region here, the only above average region in the United States for the month of July on this map. And this is again going to be caused by that monsoon season. We're seeing a strong surge in monsoon season. It is likely going to calm down for a little bit, but then it's going to rear back up again as that humidity surges back up into this area. I did put it a little bit more eastward simply because we are seeing a lot of that dry air still lingering around the southwestern United States, but this area here will still be getting a lot of above average precipitation here. And that that is going to be caused by that surge of humidity here. So we're not going to see well above average precipitation, but for this time of year, we are going to see above average precipitation, maybe about a couple inches or so above average, but we are going to be seeing a good bit of rainfall for these areas that is not usual for this time of year, especially down for this location. All right, now for the final map that we're going to be going over today, this is your official forecast for the month of July. And here you are going to see what your region will most likely be experiencing during July. So we're going to start off in the Pacific Northwest, and first you can see that we have a rain region here. So this area is generally going to be experiencing rainy conditions, and this is going to be due to that jet stream moving onshore off of the Pacific, bringing a bit of humidity with it, and just a lot of low pressure systems as we usually see, especially during the La Nina season. So this area is going to be experiencing a good bit of rainfall. Not above average though, but we are going to see a good bit of rainfall moving through this region, so it is going to be a very rainy time for these areas. But as you move east of the mountains, you're going to be experiencing a lot of dry air here, so a lot of these areas will not be getting any precipitation at all, but a lot of these areas on the west part of the mountains will be experiencing a good bit of precipitation for this time of year. All right, now as we move into our next region, we're taking a look at that hot region. Now this is a very large region, especially for much of the western United States here, and as you can see, this surges through much of the western United States. It includes a lot of portions of the valleys around the Rocky Mountains. Now, we're not going to see any above average temperatures for this region, but you are going to be experiencing your usual seasonal hot temperatures for this time of year. All right, now moving into our next region, we're going to be taking a look at that cold region here. And as you suspected, this is for much of the mountainous regions, the northern Rockies and the southern Rockies. This is going to be your area of colder weather. So we're going to be talking about mainly in the 40s and 30s. And this is mostly going to be for the mountaintops. So if you're in the valleys, expect your usual hot conditions. That's why we have some of these areas in the hot region. But we also see a lot of these mountain areas, these mountainous regions, especially down the southern Rockies. We're going to see some colder conditions here. And if you do live in some of those higher elevation regions, you can expect some colder temperatures with this region. So right now you can see a lot of these mountainous regions. We see a little bit of the mountains in northern Wyoming, and a lot of these areas are going to be generally keeping their temperatures colder as they are in higher elevation and in the mountains. So that is going to be your condition here for July. All right, now we're going to be taking a look at that flash flooding region. And as you suspected, from those monsoon-style storms, we're going to be seeing a lot of that rainfall accumulate on saturated soil. This soil is going to be very quickly saturated. It was very dry to begin with. Not a lot of rainfall in the past couple months. So as you know, there is going to be a lot of accumulating rainfall and very quickly with these style of storms. There's a lot of rainfall that fall from these monsoon-style systems as the dry air rushes into the system, causes that evaporative cooling. And what that's going to do is that's going to cause faster amounts of precipitation to fall at faster times. So we're going to see a lot of rainfall fall in a short amount of times due to those monsoon-style systems because the cold air causes it to descend quicker. So we're going to see a lot of that heavy precipitation action with these small little cells. They have a lot of power to them. They're short-lived, just like the ones we talked about in the southeastern United States, but these ones have a little bit more action due to that dry air that's surrounding the area. So while we have humidity to support the storms, we still have dry air to support those monsoon and microburst-style storms. So keep an eye out for that. This year for July, you're going to have to keep an eye out for those monsoon-style systems and potential flash flooding with them. All right, now moving into our next region, we're taking a look at that very hot region here. And as you suspected, this area is going to be experiencing a lot of those very hot temperatures, but this area is also going to have a catch to it too. The humidity in these areas are going to surge up from the Gulf of Mexico. So a lot of these areas and these valleys around the Rockies, and a lot of these areas are going to be experiencing that rush of humidity from the Gulf of Mexico, thus creating a bit of a higher heat index than you would experience in the western half of the United States. So while the western half of the United States is going to be experiencing the higher temperatures most likely, especially down in this very far southwestern portion of the United States, here you will be experiencing those a little bit lower temperatures but higher humidities, and thus the heat index will sometimes match the temperatures in the western half of the United States. So we will see that the heat index numbers will be scorching for some of these areas as we have high temperatures and a lot of humidity with them as well. Now, the further you move north, you will likely just be experiencing 80s to 90s, which is usually about normal for this time of year. But down here in the southern portions, you will be getting a lot of those 100-degree temperatures and even moving into the teens with those 100s. So keep that in mind. That is a potential for some of these areas with that heat index. But so keep in mind that that is a potential for this month of July. All right, now moving into our next region, we're going to take a look at that severe storms region. And as you suspected, this area is going to be experiencing the brunt of the severe weather this July. So as you see, this goes from the north central United States up in the Great Plains all the way to the Great Lakes region and into the Ohio Valley. So a lot of MCS systems will develop up through here with the cold fronts, and they will move southeastward in this motion. And that's where a lot of these areas are going to be experiencing that severe weather. All right, in our next region, we're going to be taking a look at that cold region, and this area is going to be for that area of slightly below average temperatures in the north. Now, as you can see, a lot of these areas are going to be experiencing cooler weather. It is generally going to be nice, cool weather. It's not going to be cold like the Rocky Mountains, but it is going to be cooler weather, maybe down into the 60s and 70s at times. So it's going to be really enjoyable weather, a nice summer weather, and it's not going to be too hot up in those locations. All right, now for our next region, we're taking a look at the isolated showers region. Now, this area is what we talked about with those tropical showers down in the southeastern United States, and this area is going to be experiencing a lot of rainy conditions, a lot of isolated showers, so they're not going to be main bands of MCS and QLCS systems there, but we are going to see a lot of single-cell thunderstorms, kind of grouping together maybe at some times, but we're going to see a lot of single-cell thunderstorms, very high precipitation and messy. They're going to be all over the southeast United States, and there will be a lot of rainfall for these areas, so keep that in mind. All right, and for our next region, we're taking a look at that humidity region. So a lot of these areas are going to get a lot of humidity surging in from the Atlantic and the Gulf of Mexico. And what you can see here is a lot of this region is from the southeast United States all the way up into the northern United States. So there's going to be a big surge of humidity, and a lot of these areas are going to be experiencing very warm conditions and very muggy conditions. So we're going to see a lot of those upper temperatures, maybe into the 70s and 80s, maybe even reaching into the 90s down here towards Tennessee and areas down in the southern United States. But we're going to be seeing a lot of activity with warm temperatures and a lot of humidity. So very muggy weather here. A good area to keep an eye on relatives and everything else when it gets really hot and muggy outside, because these conditions are very unhealthy to be outside in for prolonged periods of time. All right, and for our final region on the overall forecast map, we are taking a look at our below average temperatures region here. And this is very consistent with the cold temperatures region, but this area is going to be experiencing those slightly below average temperatures, and generally, you will be experiencing colder conditions throughout this area. So that is going to be your theme for this month, is the colder temperatures. It's not going to be far colder, but it is going to be consistent colder temperatures that move through the area. It will be enjoyable here, 60s and 70s, maybe even dropping down to the 50s at times, but general nice, cool weather for the northeastern United States. All right, I want to thank you all so much for watching today's video. I would ask that you consider subscribing for more U.S. forecasts free of charge, and I would ask you consider following the Weather at a Glance official Facebook page for more inside information and complimentary personal forecasts when you message me on my Facebook page. Again, I want to thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next video.